All right. Hello, Natick Public Schools elementary school families and hopefully some other families as well. Welcome to our PTO Meet the Candidates Night Forum. I am Sue Balboni. I'm the principal of Memorial Elementary School. And with me, I have Karen Galani, principal of Bennett Hemingway, and Aiden McCann, principal of Brown Elementary School. In the audience, we also have Stephanie Wasik, who's the principal of Lilja, and we have Jordan Hoffman, principal of Johnson Elementary School, and they will be texting me in case anything goes awry with our live streaming. I'm going to hand it over to Karen now, who's going to fill you in on how we're going to proceed for the evening.
Great. And before we actually get into that, I have a quick public service announcement from Betsy Steinberg, one of our nurses who has been coordinating our pool testing. She is seeking parent volunteers that have time during the day. If you're interested in pushing into schools and helping with the pool testing scenario. So if you're interested, reach out to your building principal and we'll connect you with information. And she's hosting a training this Thursday at 10:30 and 1:30, and we'll send you all that info if it works for you. So there's our public service announcement. And now we're going to get on with the real purpose of tonight. So thanks everybody for coming out. It's so nice to see you all virtually on the board. Nice to see you, Shai, Catherine, Matt. Thanks for joining us. We've talked a long time about doing something collaboratively across our PTOs. And, if you have to look for a silver lining, this is it, right? Because there's an opportunity for us to all get together in this forum and kind of just do this once without giving you 3 extra meetings candidates and giving us just a chance to hear from each other. So thanks for coming. Just to kind of review what we're doing here tonight, the goal is for us to kind of create an inclusive conversation across our elementary community and whoever else might be here to hear from our candidates and better understand who they are and what they're about, and then just kind of offer this neutral platform for them to share their thinking. So we're going to start with candidate introductions and just give everybody to say a chance to say hi and who they are and why they're running. And then we're going to be posting the questions from the chat like we do for StreamYard. And then each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. We'll go in a rotating order so that there's some equity there. And if a candidate is feeling like they weren't able to answer the question the way that fully, then you can have some more time after everybody's had a chance to speak. And then after candidates answer a question, if there's a clarifying question that comes up in the chat box that's pertaining to something specific, then there might be an opportunity for something that's more directed to one person. Otherwise, there'll be global questions for everybody to just have a chance to engage with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Karen, I can't see the chat, like the YouTube chat. So is that... You'll read us the questions as well?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I'll read them. They'll be posted on the screen. And I'm not sure how to fix that for you, Kat.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you. Absolutely. All right. So Catherine, do you want to go first and introduce yourself?
One thing, sorry. Karen, before we get started, for those in the audience who are watching, I encourage you to enter questions into the chat so that I can then post them onto the screen. And Catherine, if you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, if you can see where it says comments, you should be able to see what people are posting, but I am able to then show them across the screen so you'll see them.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Sue. That's an important part. Right? Audience members, put your questions in the chat box so that we have questions to post. And then we're scheduled to go from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock tonight, right? We're starting a few minutes late, but we'll really look to honor that end time unless there's something that we really need to just wrap up. And then we'll take your questions and share them with candidates so they can think about them and answer them at future forums. Okay?
Awesome.
Perfect. All right. So, Catherine, you're first on my screen. Do you want to go first?
Sure. It's so funny to think of like where I'm appearing right now on anyone's screen, but Thank you so much for doing this, especially to the PTOs and the principals. I know that this year is already a lot, and so the fact that you all add this to your plate means a lot to me as a candidate. My name is Catherine Brunel, and I am honored, honestly, to be here as a candidate for our school committee. It's a moment for me that's coming a bit full circle because, as many of you know, I'm a former teacher, an elementary school teacher in Boston and Chicago. And I'm a mom of 5 kids in the district. So my first grader up to my sophomore in high school. We've been in the district, my husband and I, with our kids for 10 years. And so this moment where I have seen other people sitting in this role, to be here tonight just feels like an honor. I hope that what I share tonight will allow you to consider me on the election in Tuesday, March 30th. You'll know that you have 2 votes on March 30th, and I hope that the things I share will allow you to think strongly of me as a candidate and choosing my name on that day. And I know that this election is as important to you as it is to me because you're here tonight, or you're watching it later, or you're asking people about it. And the election being so important is actually why I'm running and why I'm running now. Obviously, I'm entering this race, and in doing so, I've made it a contested race. And I'm doing that because in the coming years, coming out of COVID, in addition to a structural deficit for our town and our schools, we are going to need to have someone like me who has an incredible ability to reach into the community, to listen, and to be an advocate for all voices. I strongly believe in reaching across, talking to anyone that will talk to me, and understanding the issues as much as I can. And with that, I'm a big detail person, as you probably already know. And so I'd love to be able to dig into the details that are important to you and have our school committee do that more often. So thank you for having me tonight, and I can't wait to hear your questions.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. How about Shai?
Sure.
Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. So my name is Shai Fuchsman, and I'm a candidate for school committee re-election. I'm also a proud parent of 2 children who are both Natick Public School students. One of them is typically developing and one of them is not. In fact, I first got involved with the Natick Public Schools as a parent of a child with special needs, first joining and then chairing the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC. And also around the same time, I also applied and was accepted and currently co-chair the Massachusetts State Special Education Advisory Council. In both of those roles, I've been able to advocate for better special education services. And for the past 1.5 years, as a Natick School Committee member, I've been able to advocate not only for better special education, but to make sure that every student in Natick gets the best instruction, supports, and services they need to be successful. I've also advocated and will continue to advocate for inclusion and equity for all students, regardless of who they are and what they're able to do. And then the other reason why I'm running tonight for re-election is because education is what I know and it's what I do. I have a doctorate in education, and I have over 20 years of experience applying research to improve educational practice and policy. So currently, I work with school districts and state departments of education across the country, including the Massachusetts Department of Education, to improve social emotional learning programs and mental health supports for students. As you all know, supporting our students' social and emotional well-being and their mental health has always been an important element of education. But now more than ever, as we're facing a global pandemic and as we're planning to bring students back to in-person school, it's so important that we pay attention to students' social emotional well-being alongside with academic recovery. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running. I'm proud of the work that I've done so far on the school committee in bringing my social emotional learning expertise to improve education in Natick, including being a member of the reopening committee that helped to plan education this year. If I'm reelected, I will continue to bring my expertise in social emotional learning specifically and in education more broadly to make sure that our students that our schools are supporting our students this year, next year, and beyond. So tonight, I kindly ask for your vote on March 30th or before by mail. And thank you. I look forward to the questions.
Great. Thanks, Shai. Matt, last but by no means least.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Introduce yourself.
I was going to have develop a complex. So I'm Matt Brand. I am running for re-election to the school committee. 3 years ago, when I was first elected, I knew coming into my term that there was going to be a ton to learn. I knew at that point we already had in front of us the challenge of hiring a new superintendent. So that's where we started. Through those 3 years, it's been a pretty wild ride. And this last one obviously has been historically challenging for all of us with COVID. And I think moving forward into the next year, and I'm hoping that I'm assuming some of the questions might be about this, we have huge challenges that we have to work together to solve, to get all of our students and all of our teachers and staff, all of our educators, everybody responsible for making school happen, back into school safely. And the work that we have done, I am incredibly proud, like what we've done together, not just the school committee and not just the other boards and the other committees in town, but all of us as a community working together to create a model of learning here, hybrid and remote, that has been used as a model across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Other school districts are getting in touch with us all. How are you doing this? How are you doing that? So to be part of the leadership that has supported and run school for this past year and beyond, and done so well, relatively speaking, I understand it's not ideal for any of us, has been an incredible an incredible achievement and something to be really proud of. Over my time on the school committee, some of the things that I think have really been wonderful to be part of is I am on the board of directors for something called the Education Cooperative, which is a regional school in Walpole that serves 17 local communities. And many of us don't have a lot of familiarity with the Education Cooperative, but this school is for students with such complex learning needs that their home districts can't support them. And they don't have the same kinds of opportunities to do remote learning or hybrid learning that we do here. So the work that they've done and to have just a small part in that has also been incredible. As the vice chair of the school committee for the last 2 years, I've had a really great time and great opportunity to work with people as a leader to set the tone on the committee. And I've also been involved as the chair of the policy review subcommittee. So a lot of great opportunities of collaboration. In my professional life, and I'll wrap up so that we can get to the more exciting questions, I'm sure. In my professional life, I'm a software engineer and have been a technology entrepreneur for 25 years. The analytical and math skills, my nerdy skills, as my friends, family, my daughters like to regularly remind me of, mixed with the time that I've spent as a summer camp director, which happens to be the place where I met my wife, where my daughters currently attend. Those two sets of skills are a little bit unusual to mix. So I generally, and I think they're really important skills to have on the committee. The analytical, sort of data-driven, very objective look at everything combined with empathy, which I think is a really important. We have a lot of people who have a lot of different kinds of concerns and a lot of different perspectives. And we also have to collaborate with people who don't have kids in the system. We live in the schools are, of course, the biggest investment we make, but the schools are not in a vacuum here. We exist in a town with lots of other services, and it's important that we work with everybody to make sure that everybody gets the things that they need. And we have to find ways to compromise and constantly work together. So I, like the other candidates, ask for your vote and support on March 30th or sooner. I am thankful to be here tonight with all of you, and I look forward to the questions. Thanks for having us.
Great, thank you. When we move to the questions from our audience, I just ask that all of the candidates also mute themselves because I'm hearing that we're getting some feedback. That's what I'm being told on the side over here. So we'll have you mute, thank you. And then when it's your turn to speak, we'll go ahead and you can unmute yourself. I do have one little comment here from Kate Neville, who says, "Yay, nerds!" So, way to go, Matt. Karen, do you want me to go ahead and post the first question? And
yeah, I think we're ready.
Right.
Unless anybody, you guys good to go? All right, let's do this.
Awesome.
Perfect.
So our first question is, can you speak to teacher compensation in Natick, particularly in light of how our salary structure currently compares with comparable districts? And how would you approach teacher compensation? I'm actually going to send this over to Shai first, as Catherine went first last time, and we'll move in that order.
Yeah, so it's a great question. Unfortunately, one of the things that concerns me in particular is that when you compare our teachers' salaries to those of comparable districts, we're not paying teachers as much as other districts, and I think that is a problem. It's a problem because they work really hard. I'm a son of a teacher. My mother, as a retired teacher, I know how hard she worked. And because we want to attract the best talent to the district so that we can have the best teachers. The reason why our salaries are lower there's a history to it, which has to do with the fact that we had a bubble, or the sudden increase several years ago of our student population, our student enrollment, and so we had to hire all these teachers and maintain certain. We can increase the budget as much to increase their salaries. So by having more teachers in the district entering into the district, we had to kind of stall the salary increases. We are now having that bubble. It's kind of a middle school and a high school. We're seeing fewer students coming into elementary school, and that gives us an opportunity over the next couple of years to plan very carefully to increase our teacher salary so that they do come on par and are competitive with other districts. That is something that we are already working on and we will continue to work on. For example, we negotiated several years ago. The school committee negotiated the COLAs in such a way that this year there's a 3% COLA, and that will help bring up those salaries to be comparable. So it is an issue. It's an important issue that we need to pay attention to, and we have been paying attention to. And I have I'm sure that I'm confident that we'll be able to get the teacher salaries where they should be. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Matt?
Am I hiding under the question? Is that what this? I don't know if I show up on the bottom. I'll come up here. There we go. No, you can leave it. It's fine. I think it's a great question, and people should see it. It's okay. Thank you. I'm tall enough. I can just rest my chin on it. Like Dr. Fruitsman said, it's a really important thing to discuss. One of the things that I would add would be, we have a wonderful relationship with our teachers union. And that is not something that I take for granted, and is, as I hear from people in other districts where they don't have that great relationship. And so when it comes time for us to do contract negotiations, we have a really good partner in the EAN that allows us to work together to find what works for everybody as best as possible. Do our teachers get paid enough? Do any teachers get paid enough? The answer is no, of course not. And in the last year, I believe, the student to teacher ratio in Natick has actually dipped below the state average, which we actually need to hire more teachers. We're always trying to hire more teachers. But like I said before about living in the vacuum, or the schools existing and not existing in a vacuum, we have a lot of things that we need to do in a budget. The teacher salaries make up the largest portion of that budget. We have to always be working with them and always be working with the town to get the appropriate money so that we can provide more to the people who work so hard. It should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Our teachers in the last year, no other industry that I've ever seen has had to change what they do overnight, like the way our teachers did. On Friday, we're doing one thing, and on Monday, newsflash, you have to change everything about your career. I certainly would not have been able to do that in my professional career, and they certainly deserve as much as we could get them. And I am thankful again that we work together with them to do, with a really great working relationship. And I hope moving forward, we can continue to get more for our teachers who certainly deserve it.
Thanks, Matt. I don't know if you saw my little signal that you were running short on time. So we are timing you to give everyone a fair shake. All right, Catherine, you're up.
Thank you so much. It's funny, I actually have the salary page that I can't show it very well, but the table from our budget book, because I've been looking at it a lot today. And I would actually answer this question a little differently, because I think anything about our budget has to be looked at a little more holistically. And that's why my first A in my ABCs is aligning our budget with our priorities. So we need to tell our teachers that they are our priority by making sure that they are in the budget in that way. We can't have 1,000 priorities in Natick in that way, right? We have to say to our teachers that if we want to offer a fair market value and we want to understand what a Massachusetts teacher makes, then we have to build that into our budget. And that is incumbent upon the school committee to do with the power they have over the budget. So it's just a simple choice that we need to make. It's not a simple thing to do, but if we want to say that our teachers are the number one thing, I know for me and my experience with our students, the teachers have unbelievably been the number one experience for us in Natick Public Schools. So we need to back that up with our budget. I've taken a tiny class on MOU understanding, because I know that that's a huge piece of what the next school committee is going to need to do, because we will be entering into a new MOU. And Natick, unlike other districts at this point, still uses school committee members to negotiate with our teachers union. So I want to be ready for that when I step in, if I am elected. Thank you for the question.
I think it's important for the audience to know what MOU means. It's our memorandum of understanding, basically our agreement between the teachers union and our school district. So just so everyone is clear on that. Next question. What do you see as the school committee's role in determining the details of day-to-day classroom instruction, specifically related to number, frequency, and length of assignments? Matt?
That's another good question. I think it's important to understand what the purview of the school committee is, for starters. The school committee is responsible for formulating and getting a budget in order, supervision and oversight of the superintendent, and also policy formation and updates. Right. The typical purview of the school committee is not to oversee day-to-day classroom instruction, certainly, or the length of assignments or things like that. However, the policies that we put in place and one of the goals that we have, one of our district goals, the fourth one, which happens to be the goal that I'm currently assigned to sort of help oversee, has to do with nurturing connections. It's called the nurturing connections thing and sort of communications. Part of our responsibility in the school committee is to make sure that we have the pulse of the community. And we are talking to parents, and many of us, not all of us on the committee, but many of us have children in the system. That pulse, what we hear on the ground in the community, certainly is communicated to the department at our meetings, and we are responsible for helping to keep the superintendent informed about what's going on. That is primary. I'm not a teacher. It would not be my responsibility to drive like day-to-day classroom instruction. I don't think anybody would want that. But we are here to help support and put policies in place that help support and create budgets that help support all of those learning needs. And the way we do that is by looking at data, being informed about what's going on, and then collaborating with everybody in town to figure out what's best for our students and support them in that way.
Thank you, Matt.
Was there a time signal? I don't know if I saw it.
You were okay. You were within it. Catherine.
Thank you so much. Oh, I just knocked my desk over almost. So thank you for the question, Laura. One thing I will say is that understanding the pulse is different than knowing data. And so I think that that is something that the school committee, I would like to see more of. I would like to back all of our decisions with data. And while it should definitely not inform, from a school committee member to a teacher, that should go through the administration. I think data that we can collect, for example, how many hours of homework are our students doing, would definitely be an important thing for us to understand, and then to understand the outcomes of that. So, it's this tricky relationship that has to be had with understanding what the data points are, and then how to ask the administration for that, and then to have the administration follow through in appropriate ways. Again, the role of the school committee is budget, policy, and superintendent. And in all of those things, we're always asking questions and digging into it so that we can support our teachers through the policy, budget, and with our follow through with the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Shai?
Sure. So what I'll add to what has already been said is the role of the school committee really is to bring the priorities and the values of the entire community to those three areas of purview. How we, tying our priorities and our values to our budget, to our policies, and to the criteria that we use to supervise and how we supervise the superintendent. So as Matt said, it's not in our role to go into the classroom and tell a teacher how much work to provide or the frequency, but we are focusing on outcomes, on student outcomes, and not just academic outcomes, but also, making sure students their social emotional well-being is cared for, that we're helping them develop critical thinking. And so we want to make sure that, we bring those priorities to those three areas. So for example, we can put a criteria, and we have for Dr. Nolan in the supervision to say, we want to make sure students are well supported in terms, that there's a right balance between academic and social emotional supports. And then, as Catherine said, we can look at data to see, is that really happening? So to put the criteria out there in terms of our priorities, and then connect that to the data that we can look at and examine and use ultimately to evaluate the superintendent. That's one mechanism, that's one lever that we have to make sure in general that we're meeting our priorities. And then the last thing is what Matt said too, I'll add that, is the communication piece with the community. In order for us as elected officials to properly channel those priorities and values of our community into our areas, our 3 areas of purview, we need to be in communication with the community, and that's something that we've been doing a lot. Something that I care a lot about. I've been involved. I've been connecting with CPAC, the Special Education Group, the ELL group, LPAC, and other kinds of parent groups in order to better understand what are the issues that that parents care about, that our community overall cares about. Including the right balance in terms of academic workload for students. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, next question from Jillian Wilson, one of our town partners. To all candidates, what are your thoughts on the Parent Engagement Center? How would you prioritize it in the budget, and what data would you use to inform decisions related to it? So Catherine, you're up on that one first.
Thank you. Well, I'll share also that I'm a member of the space study that is considering the Parent Engagement Center among many other pieces of the space study. And my thoughts are, honestly, right now during this COVID recovery and as we approach a structural deficit, and a brick and mortar Parent Engagement Center I have not seen enough data at this point to put our budget towards it. To prioritize that as a number one item in the budget in the coming years. Parent engagement in general, I'd actually like to call it family engagement, understanding that families look different. And I think that family engagement is absolutely something we should do. We've seen with this remote learning experience that engaging families looks a lot different than it ever did. I heard incredible statistics about the parent-teacher conference rates that happened because parent-teacher conferences were allowed to happen virtually this year. That's an example of family engagement. So I don't want to, I don't think in the budget, in the priorities, that the Parent Engagement Center is a #1 priority that should be for our district, but I do think family engagement is 100% a priority.
Shai?
So I'm also going to break down the question into the investment in the brick and mortar family engagement building versus the actual concept of family engagement. There is a space study and there's a task force. We had a consultant look at our space use across the district. And we are examining it, and obviously there's a space task force that is looking further to present recommendations to the school committee. I'm a data geek myself. That's what I do when I talk about education research. I look at data, and so I'm also going to be looking at not only looking at financial data, looking at space data, looking at what is the research say about the proper use of space overall. Honestly, like Catherine, I don't really see a brick and mortar building as being a priority right now, but I'm going to wait for the full study to look at exactly how we allocate space. In terms of family engagement, this is one of the hardest nuts to crack when it comes to schools. How do we engage families? And I think we do need to put more effort into it. One of the things that I love about my job by working with school districts across the country is that I get to see some of the creative and innovative strategies that are used across the country to engage families. Obviously, it's not an issue related specific to Natick, and bring some of those ideas to Dr. Nolan and to the administration. There are many creative ways. I'm also proud of the work that we did CPAC when we engaged parents in the social emotional learning book club that we did last year. It was interrupted by COVID, but we're going to bring that back. That was a very creative idea of how to engage parents, having people just gather in their living rooms and talk about a book as opposed to showing up to a school event. So I think there's a lot of creative ideas for family engagement that have been and will continue to bring up to the administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Shai. Matt?
So I will try not to echo too much of what you've already heard, but generally, I think I agree with a lot of the sentiments, which is I would not prioritize over a lot of the other things a brick and mortar parent engagement center right now. But I agree that engaging with families is critically important all the time. And part of what we're doing on the space study work group is to study all of the different issues that we have regarding all of the different kids in all of the different buildings. That's one thing that we will look at. Like Dr. Fruchton said, it is about looking at all the data first. When we go through each budget, we do the same thing. Before I draw any conclusions on anything, I like to see as much information as possible so we can make educated decisions on what needs to happen. I think generally in terms of engagement with families, there are lots of different opportunities. It's not just about, we want to be able to provide support for families and fun for families and lots of things to make sure that our families and our learners are all engaged in what we're doing. I will say personally, one of my favorite types of engagement that I think, just personally for me, I used to always participate in college day when my kids were in elementary school. These types of opportunities I got to go into school and teach computer science to 3rd and 4th graders for 90 minutes. To go back to the teacher salary question, there's more evidence that they need. That was the hardest 90 minutes of my life. But those types of engagement moments, the big ones and the small ones, are going to be critical moving forward as we get all of our students and all of our educators back into the building safely full time. Everybody's going to need a lot more support, and I think that's where the value of whatever form of parent engagement that we come up with really comes into play. But I would not prioritize a building over some of the other things that are in our budget right now.
Catherine, you want to respond?
Susan, could because I just would like to acknowledge the elephant in the chat box, in the sense that along with the space study and the memo that Dr. Nolan has written to the school committee, also listed as one of the steps in that space study is a potential closure of Johnson. So it's not direct, it's never been named as the use of the Parent Engagement Center, but it's definitely, conversations have happened at the Johnson, like on the blacktop of the Johnson, like, oh, is this going to happen again? And so I see that in the chat box, and I just want to acknowledge that this is why I think we need more community involvement. And this is why I think that we need to bring parents along, because when we produce a memo to the school committee that has things like a parent engagement center and the potential closure of Johnson without a really authentic two-way communication, and I've been pushing for more authentic two-way family communication before I became a candidate and now as a candidate. And this is an example of why we need it. Because now there are families that are a bit insecure because we're discussing these two things in the same study task force.
Thank you. So that brings us to the next question, which is that last spring, Dr. Nolan presented the closure of Johnson as a cost-saving measure. Looking back, do you feel this was handled well by the school committee, and how would you handle this going forward?
Me.
Yes, Shai, thank you.
So let me say this: when this idea first came about, I think it was handled poorly, not by the administration, to be honest. I know that we were dealing with a pandemic, we were dealing with a big budget cut, and ideas had to be put forth on a slide very quickly, and this one was one of the ideas. I think doing it the way it was done was an unnecessary way to traumatize parents and children who were already dealing with the pandemic, like we all were, and we were all already dealing with figuring out if they're going to be able to go back to school. To then not know if their school will even be there was, I think, was not handled well. I don't think we should be closing schools in a matter of a month or two. Having said that, in general, there is a space task force. I think that is going to look at all this, the issues of space across the district, and I think it is important to look at all options. I can tell you, I can reassure you, I will not support the closing of any school unless it comes with a good transition plan of how we're going to transition students to wherever their new school is in a thoughtful way. How are we going to transition parents, because parents are part of the school community. So we need, if we're going to close any school, it should be done based on data, based on the priorities of the community as a whole, what's best for the community, and it has to be done with a good transition plan so that there's as smooth of a transition as possible.
Thank you, Shai. Matt?
So again, not to just agree, I'll add on to what Shai was saying. I too was not happy with the way that information was communicated, and it's unfortunate. Like Shai was saying, we're all dealing with a lot, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic. But when I step back and I look objectively, it is our responsibility, whether we would personally like the outcome or not, to look at all of the different options. And I would, again, it is not in anyone's best interest to traumatize or create an uncomfortable situation for parents who might be hearing about these types of things for the first time. That was not good. It is important for us to have these conversations that are going to be difficult and figure out what the right solutions are. The space study this committee was formed so that we could look, that's just one of the many things that we'll be looking at. There was an independent firm who did a big space study of the whole district. There's a lot of data that we will use in addition to whatever other plans we have in the community and however everything connects, that we will have to use in order to ultimately make the decision. I agree as well that whatever decision we end up making, and nothing is decided, whatever decision the school committee ends up making based on the recommendations from the space study work group, it will be really important to include parents and families and people who are not involved in the schools directly. Everybody and the kids, everybody is affected by all of this, and it will be really critical to have a really great transition plan that is not overnight, that gives people the time that they need if that is what the outcome ends up being, even if it's not. So, I just saw the thing. That's why I didn't see Aiden. I saw it now this time, so I'll wrap up. But that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Catherine?
And for anyone that doesn't know me, full disclosure, I am a mom who lives in the Johnson district. So I lived through this experience, and I was extremely disappointed in our school committee. I have to commend Dr. Nolan because she made herself available constantly during that time. And at one point I asked her, can you just take it off the table? If we think it's just an option, like was just shared, can we just take it off the table and figure out what else we need? And she said, I can't, because that's a decision the school committee has to make. And so at that point, we reached out to all of the school committee members, and they also felt as if they needed to have a unified front and had Johnson on the table. When we talk about options, if we give options, we also need to give information with them. Never once until we pushed to get the money, not only about Johnson, but also about theater ending and sports, did we then start to see some of the numbers that would be saved. At first, it was just a list on a slide that really did traumatize people. So when we jumped in and we actually I co-founded Protect Natick's Future because of this exact issue. I didn't want to see any of these things get cut. As I mentioned at the beginning, I have 5 kids in this district, so we go across the district. My sophomore in high school needs sports. Were sports to be cut, that would have changed his life this year. My 7th grader sings constantly in my house. Theater is essential to her. So none of those options were good options, especially without any details around them. And I think that whole district plan that we have to talk about is one that is why I have this idea about meaningful, authentic community relationships. Creating policy, creating budget decisions where the community comes first. You hear all the time in Natick that relationships matter. And I would love to see that enacted more from our school committee.
Thank you. Next question. The amount of ELL children and families is increasing every year in the Natick schools. How do you think the school district can get prepared to support those families in the short, medium, and long term? Matt?
Great question. There are a couple of things on different levels that we can do and do as a district. From a support perspective, we actually have people in the central office who speak various languages, so that if somebody calls, this is part of the family engagement. If a parent calls and English is not their first language, right, they have somebody who they can speak with comfortably so that they can get the information that they need. On a student level, there are a number of things, and this maybe falls under the umbrella of equity and inclusion within our district. There are a lot of things that our teachers do already to make sure that all of our students feel safe and welcome in the classroom. This is inclusive of making sure that the curriculum has content that teaches a variety of different experiences, so that students are not just learning about typical authors that are just white, or things that are just about American history, or there's a wide range and diversity in the curriculum that's important for all of our students to experience, so that when students who might not speak English as a first language, can have access to a community that welcomes them, and where it's not that foreign for them to come in and meet somebody who might be a little bit different or might have a different experience than they do. So there's support at the school level with the curriculum. There's support with parent engagement at the central office. And those are things that we have to do. We have more and more people moving to Natick because we have such a nice place to live and it's a desirable school system. So we have to be working all the time to make sure people feel welcome, safe, and able to learn and achieve at their highest level. And Aiden, I'm sorry, because of the question, I don't know if you were holding up. But, okay.
Thanks, Matt. Catherine?
Matt, if I could give you my spot on the top rung here, I would pass it. But thank you, Monica. And I have to say that I want to commend Monica for the work that she is doing with the LPAC and working with the principals and the ELL staff at Christy Arnold. I know that has been a really important partnership for our ELL families, and I want to see those kinds of things continue to develop. I love that you say in the short, medium, and long term, because that brings us back to this idea of budget and priorities. We have to be able to dream and think long term, and I know one of the dreams that many people in Natick have is an immersion program, a language immersion program, not just for students who are speaking a second language, but also for students who speak English and would like to expand into a bilingual education. That would be an amazing long-term goal for Natick to have. We know that our surrounding districts have something like that. We're going to have to put that as a priority in our budget, you know, if we want to see something like that happen. Medium and short term, I think it goes back to family communication and saying to our families that are ELL, what do you need and how can we support you? And then saying to our teachers, what do you need to support the teachers, or sorry, to support the students in your classrooms that have this need? I love that you said that the number is increasing, and I would love to see those percentages discussed and where they are. Aiden, I'm not just saying this because you're here, but at some point there are schools that consider school-based budgets because there are different populations at each school. So if we find that our Brown school, for example, has more ELL students, equity would need to be defined. And equity does not mean the same, right? And so that might change some of the way we do our budgeting for our schools.
Thank you, Catherine. Shai?
So let me just start by saying that the issue of ELL is a personal issue to me because I am a former ELL student. I walked into third grade not speaking a word of English into an English-speaking school. And 20 years later, I was able to write a dissertation to get a doctorate in English. And that's one of the reasons why I've been so involved with LPAC and working along with Monica and helping her figure out ways to connect with more parents. The biggest challenge with LPAC is that we have over 50 languages spoken in the public schools right now, and that number is growing. So it's both the number of students are growing, but also the number of languages. And so we definitely need to build a much stronger ELL program. I had an opportunity to talk in Spanish with a few of the Spanish-speaking families here in Natick and heard how they're struggling to support their other families because there are not enough teachers who speak Spanish. So we have to use volunteers, and the volunteers obviously have so much time they can give. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to hire more diverse teachers. That's something we need to do in general. But that also includes hiring teachers who speak more languages. So there's more people in this public school system that can actually communicate with both the students and the parents. And again, knowing that we have a lot of languages, we won't be able to cover them all. But the more languages we can have represented among our staff, I think the stronger the program will be. And then we just need to use research on the best practices for second language acquisition. The research is there. We need to figure out what are the best strategies. Again, I'm all about evidence-based programs and evidence-based strategies. There is tons of research on how to do that. And to Monica's point, thinking about how do we do that? How do we support students in the short term, but also ultimately the long term? How do we bring the best programs and the professional development to teachers so more teachers are ELL certified so that they can teach our ELL students? So I think there's a lot of things that we are already doing, but there's definitely more we need to do given the increase in number of students in this population.
Thank you, Shai. Karen, do you want to take over?
It's a skill I'm still working on since last March. Unmute, right? My family tells me to mute myself all the time. So it seems like the questions in the chat box have been addressed and covered. So it seems like a good opportunity for us to circle back with candidates and give you an opportunity to offer some closing remarks. And why don't we go in reverse order? So we'll go, how about Matt, do you want to lead us? And
Sure.
then we'll go Shai and Catherine. Great.
Sure. So thank you all for being here. I know we're all busy during the day, and then to come and do this at night. I'm sure many of you come to our school committee meetings as well, and just a lot of hours, particularly the principals who are here, who I know have had busy days. This has been really interesting. The questions really, really great. One thing I would like to share, we have a lot of these big challenges coming up. The pool testing, which just started this week, which has been, I don't know if people, I think the number was 52 pools tested, all negative. So this is good news. And as we get more into this pool testing thing, we'll get more and more participation, and that will be great. But what we are learning from this data now is how we are going to safely get everybody back into the schools. These are huge challenges moving forward. We have big needs like, and this one goes unsung quite a bit, but not in my world. From an IT perspective, information technology perspective, we have an IT staff that handles roughly, each person handles around 1,000 devices in the district per person. That is, I have a hard time managing the handful of devices in my house and the messages I get from my family to fix their computers for them. These people work so hard and have been doing so. We sent over 950 laptops to families who did not have have enough devices at home to do remote school. We've sent hotspots to people who did not have access to Wi-Fi. This staff works so hard and deserve all of the credit. And as we move towards a reopening, which will happen, and I don't know, President Biden tweeted today, just a couple of hours ago, that it was time to basically prioritize teachers as essential workers. Maybe that tweet could have happened a couple of weeks ago, but I'm glad finally it's out. So, like, there is this push to get people vaccinated, which is wonderful. I am looking forward to getting everybody back into the school safely, full time. We have these huge needs moving forward. It's going to require a ton of collaboration, a ton of listening and working together, and a lot of open-mindedness and objectivity so that we can figure out what is the best solution for all of us, and for all of you, for everybody, and we can get back. We're already a great district, right? But we can always be better. We can always work harder. We can always do more to work together. So again, thank you for being here and for asking the thoughtful questions. You can find me at mattfornatick.com. Please vote on March 30th, or it's still time to request a mail-in ballot if that's something that is more comfortable for you. So you can still do that. And thanks again for being here. And thank you to the other candidates and the principals for hosting all of this. This has been great. And
Shai, you're up.
Yeah. I also want to thank you all for tuning in to my two fellow candidates and to the three principals, well, all five principals who make this happen, as well as the PTOs. And I want to reiterate one of the things that Matt said, which is this has been both an incredibly challenging year for our students, for our families, and for our staff. But it also has been a year of innovation, of creativity, and a lot of hard work. I always say that being a teacher during this current pandemic is like going to the best surgeon for surgery, except that their hands are tied behind their back. And by the way, their 3-year-old child is running around the operation room as well. It's been a challenging time. But we've done a lot of amazing things, and I want to, I give all the credit to the staff. But we as a school committee, we worked really hard this past year now. Since I've been there, I'm sure before that too. It's been a difficult year on the school committee. We've worked really hard, in front of the cameras, behind the scenes, talking to parents, working with our health, our colleagues in the Board of Health, working with law enforcement in town. Really working with everyone to really make sure that we're able to educate our children during this very difficult time. It's been an honor and it's been a privilege to work with this school committee and to do this important work. And I'm excited to continue to do this. I know that next year is going to be hard too, as we bring kids back to school. But there's, again, an opportunity for us to apply a lot of innovation and lessons learned from this year to reinvent education in Natick, to make education better in Natick, with everything that we've learned from being forced to do this pandemic. We not only have the opportunity to do academic recovery well and do education well, we can do education best. We can really achieve for excellence in the years to come, with creativity, with a lot of it, with innovation. And I'm excited to be part of that team that helps make that happen. Thank you.
Oh, Shai, I'm sorry, I had my microphone on. If you guys had, I'm having a little technical difficulties at the end here. Sorry about that. Well, thank you, everyone, if you're still here, and thank you for hanging in there with us. One thing I wanted to say about the salary, or about the LPAC question, or from Monica, also ties back to the salary question. And I think that's a good way to end, right? Because we can't just look at one issue. In our school district, we can't just look at one school or one decision that was made. We have to be using best practices. If people like nerds, I hope people also like process, because I'm a big process person. And I think that there are processes that we could be using to better utilize our school committee and to better amplify the voices of our community, not just the parents, but also the residents, so that all of us are working together for our students. We have an amazing administration in Natick. They are so smart. They are so professional. I just am blown away by the things that my kids experience at the schools. And so equally so, I think we need as strong of a school committee as we possibly can, so that we can partner with our strong administration. And it's why I've set out my ABCs. I think it goes back to me about aligning our budgets with priorities, about backing every decision we make with data, and about creating meaningful policy with authentic communication with our community. I haven't seen those things consistently enough, and I would love to be a part of the process to make those things happen more consistently. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks everybody for coming out tonight, for sharing your information, for taking part in this event, for us to finally get together as an elementary cohort and do something collaboratively, right? We talked about this, and now we actually pulled it off, so we can put a little thumbs up in the check in the win column, right? And so this information, I think this meeting has been recorded, and so we'll push it out to the community so that everybody can have access to it if they weren't able to attend tonight. And thanks again to everybody. I'm going to end with concluding with the public service announcement too. If you're interested in pool testing, contact your local principals, because we will get you all the information that you need. And thanks again to everybody for being here.
Happy 100 day tomorrow to the principals.
Yes.
I know that will be a fun day.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.